She looked too young for marriage, the cowboy said. I'll wait until you're ready. Years later, her choice surprised everyone. The town of Millbrook did not have much, but it had opinions. Plenty of them. And on the morning of the Millbrook County Fair in the summer of 1987, those opinions were aimed, as they often were, at the Hollis family, and specifically at their youngest daughter, Clara May. Clara was 16 years old that summer. She was not tall, but she carried herself like she was. Her dark hair was always slightly out of place, as if she had better things to do than tame it, and her eyes were the deep brown color of river water after a long rain. She walked through the fairgrounds with a canvas bag over one shoulder and a look on her face that her mother described as, that look again, the one that meant Clara was thinking about something she had not yet said out loud. She was standing at a vendor's table near the east gate, holding up a small tin of watercolor paints and asking, very calmly, why the price had gone up by 30 cents since last summer. The vendor, a red-faced man named Gerald who sold art supplies and overpriced lemonade, was trying to explain inflation to a teenager who was not having any of it. The paint hasn't changed, Clara said. The tin hasn't changed. The color hasn't changed. So what exactly costs more? Gerald opened his mouth. Then closed it. That was when Everett Calloway walked by. He was 24 years old, a lean and sun-darkened man who had spent most of his life on his family's cattle ranch just outside of town. He wore the same kind of boots he always wore, the same kind of hat, and he moved through the world slowly, not because he was lazy, but because he had the particular confidence of a man who knew exactly where he was going and had decided not to rush. He heard Clara's question. He stopped walking. He listened to the whole exchange. And when Gerald finally gave in and sold her the paints at last summer's price, Everett smiled, not at Clara, just to himself, and kept walking. But he thought about her the rest of the day. 2 weeks later, his mother mentioned the Hollis girl at dinner. She said that Earl Hollis, Clara's father, had been talking at church about his daughter, about how bright she was, about how she needed some direction. Everett's mother used the word suitable, and Everett understood what she meant. He did not say much. He went out to the porch afterward and sat in the dark for a long time, watching the stars come out one by one over the flat black edge of the land. He was not opposed to the idea. But he was not in a rush, either. The families met for Sunday supper. Clara sat at the table with her arms crossed so tightly that her mother kept giving her small, desperate looks from across the table. Everett noticed. He did not comment on it. He talked with her father about the price of cattle feed, and with her mother about the church garden, and he passed the bread without being asked. Clara watched him the way a person watches a bird they have not seen before, not warmly, but with attention. After supper, her father walked Everett to his truck. Clara stood on the porch and watched. She could not hear what they were saying, but she saw her father nod several times, and she felt the cold weight of being decided about. She went inside before Everett drove away. The next morning, she told her mother exactly what she thought. She was 16 years old. She had not finished school. She had never been more than 40 miles from Millbrook. She had plans, or the beginning of plans, the rough sketch of a life she could see in her mind but had not yet named out loud. She was not ready to become anyone's wife. She was barely ready to become herself. Her mother listened carefully, which was more than most mothers in Millbrook would have done. And then she said, quietly, "You should tell him that yourself." Clara wrote Everett a letter. It was 4 paragraphs long, polite but firm, and she used the word respectfully twice. She said she was flattered, though she was not entirely, and that she was sure he was a good man, though she did not yet know, but that she was not in a position to consider any kind of arrangement. She sealed the envelope and mailed it before she could change her mind. 3 days later, she received a reply. It was a single sentence, written in clean, steady handwriting on plain white paper. Asterisk, "That's all right. I'll wait until you're ready." Asterisk. Clara read it twice. She almost threw it away. Instead, she put it in the back of her sketchbook, between 2 pages of horse drawings she had done the winter before. She did not see Everett again for 6 months. Life in Millbrook continued the way life in small towns always does, loudly and slowly at the same time. Clara finished her junior year of high school and started her senior year. She took an art class at the county library taught by a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Birch, who told Clara, in a private voice after the other students had left one afternoon, that she had real talent. Clara held onto that sentence the way a person holds onto a warm stone in cold weather. She graduated the following June. She was not the top of her class, but she was close, and she gave a short speech at the ceremony that made 2 people cry, though she had not intended that. Her father shook her hand proudly. Her mother hugged her twice. Her younger brother threw his program at her head out of affection. That fall, Clara enrolled at Hester College, a small school 40 miles away that offered a degree in fine arts. Her father was uncertain. Her mother was quietly proud. The town was mostly confused. Girls from Millbrook did not usually go to college for art. They went to Hester, if they went at all, for teaching or nursing. But Clara went, and she took her canvas bag and her watercolors and a second-hand book about Georgia O'Keeffe that she had found at a library sale, and she did not look back at the town limits for a long time. College was difficult in ways she had not expected. Not the classes, those she handled well, but the loneliness of the first semester, the way she did not yet know how to exist in a place where no one knew her. She made friends slowly, the way she did most things, but she made them well. She discovered printmaking in her second year and fell completely in love with it. She loved the pressure of it, the commitment. You could not half do a printing plate. You had to commit to every line. She came home each summer. Millbrook was always the same, and it always made her feel both comforted and slightly out of breath. The second summer home, she ran into Everett at the feed store. He was loading sacks into the bed of his truck. He looked the same, maybe a little more weathered around the eyes, but the same steadiness, the same unhurried way of existing. He saw her and nodded. "Clara," he said. "Everett," she said. They talked for about 10 minutes. He asked how school was going. She told him about printmaking. He listened with his full attention, the kind of listening that made you feel like what you were saying actually mattered. She asked how the ranch was doing. He told her about a rough winter and a good spring. They did not talk about the letter. They did not talk about waiting. They talked the way 2 people talk when they have enough respect for each other to simply be honest. She drove home thinking about how rare that was. The years moved. Clara turned 20. Then 22. She earned her degree and spent a year in a larger city, working at a frame shop during the day and making prints at night in a shared studio the size of a large closet. She learned what it felt like to be poor and free at the same time, which is a very specific kind of feeling that teaches you things about yourself that nothing else can. She had one serious relationship during those years, a man named Davis, who was charming and energetic and who loved her prints but never quite understood why she spent so much time making them. He wanted things to move faster than Clara felt comfortable moving. When it ended without drama, and Clara felt more relief than sorrow, which told her everything she needed to know. She called her mother often. Millbrook pulled at her sometimes in the evening, like a tide she did not entirely resist. She missed her family. She missed the smell of the open land. She did not miss being known so completely that she had no room to surprise anyone. When she was 23, her mother was diagnosed with a heart condition that was not immediately dangerous but required careful attention. Clara came home for a long weekend and stayed for 3 weeks. She made meals and drove her mother to appointments and sat with her on the porch in the evenings, watching the light go orange and red over the flat horizon. It was during one of those evenings that her mother asked about Everett. "Does he still wait?" Clara asked. Her mother smiled in a way that suggested she knew more than she was saying. "He never brought it up again, if that's what you mean. But he asks about you sometimes. Not romantically. Just the way a person asks about someone they're interested in." Clara did not respond. She watched a small bird land on the fence post at the edge of the yard and then fly away again, as if it had changed its mind. She turned 24 the following spring. She came home again, this time with the intention of staying for the summer. Her mother was doing better, but Clara had been thinking about home in a new way, not as the place she had left, but as the place that had made her, which is a different thing entirely. The town, of course, had its own ideas. The moment Clara May Hollis was seen at the Millbrook grocery store with her college degree and her city manners and her hair still slightly out of place, the whispers started. People said she had finally come around. People said it was about time. People said that surely now she would see what she had been too young to see before, that a steady man with good land was a fine thing to have. Clara heard the whispers. She had grown up in Millbrook. She always heard the whispers. A Sunday came when the pastor, a well-meaning man who had known Clara since she was 4 years old, gave a sermon about patience and its rewards. He did not use any names. He did not need to. Clara sat in the third row, between her mother and her brother, and felt the weight of a story she had not written settling over her shoulders like a coat that did not quite fit. She was not angry. She understood it. People in small towns love each other in the particular way of people who have watched each other their whole lives. They want things to go a certain way because they have invested themselves in imagining it. The story of the patient cowboy and the girl who finally came home was a story that felt right to them, the way a familiar song feels right even before the chorus. But Clara had learned, in her years away, that the most important thing about making a choice is making it for the right reason. She did not avoid Everett. There was no reason to avoid him. But she also did not seek him out, not out of pride, but because she was genuinely still thinking, and she was not the kind of person who made decisions while she was still thinking. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in late July when things became clear. She had taken a walk along the irrigation canal behind the old Gallagher property, a long stretch of flat land bordered by tall grass and the sound of frogs. She used to walk there as a child. The canal smelled like mud and summer and something she had no name for, which she had decided long ago was just what home smelled like. She nearly walked past Everett before she saw him. He was sitting on the bank with a fishing line in the water and a book open on his knee, though the book was closed now, because he had heard her coming. They talked for a long time that evening. About her prince. About his ranch. About a piece of land nearby that he had recently bought, the old Gallagher building in town, which had been empty for 2 years. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone who does not know. The quiet of someone choosing how to say something exactly right. "I thought it might make a good studio," he said. "For someone who works with printmaking. The light from the north windows is very good in that building." I looked. Clara was still for a long time. The frogs were loud. The water moved slowly past them in the late golden light. "You looked," she said. "I looked," he said. She did not say anything else for a while. Not because she was unsure, she was becoming quite sure, actually, but because she wanted to be honest with herself about why. Not because the town expected it. Not because her mother would be relieved. Not because Everett had waited, and waiting deserved a reward. Those were not reasons. Those were pressures wearing the clothes of reasons. The real reason was standing right in front of her, in dusty boots, having bought a building because of the quality of its north-facing light. She said yes on a Thursday. Not at a grand moment. Not with an audience. She said it at his kitchen table, over coffee, plainly and without ceremony, and Everett received it the same way, plainly, warmly, without making it bigger than it needed to be. They were married the following April in a small ceremony at the Millbrook Church. Clara kept her last name professionally, which the town discussed briefly and then largely forgot about. She opened her studio in the Gallagher building that same month. The north windows were, in fact, very good. The town said they always knew it would happen this way. They told the story at dinners and at family gatherings, the story of the patient cowboy and the stubborn girl who finally came around. They meant it kindly. They believed it fully. But Clara knew a different version of the story. In her version, she had not come around. She had arrived. There was a difference, a real one, between being worn down by time and being ready because you finally knew yourself well enough to choose clearly. She had not married Everett because she ran out of other options, or because the town willed it, or because patience is its own kind of pressure when applied long enough. She had married him because, on a Tuesday evening in July beside an irrigation canal, she had understood something important: the right person does not try to complete you. They simply make room for everything you already are. Everett understood that. He had understood it from the beginning, which was perhaps why he had been so easy to wait with, even when she had not been waiting at all. She printed a series of 12 works that first year in the studio, each one inspired by a different landscape she had known. The final print in the series showed a flat horizon at dusk, the particular color of the sky over Millbrook that she had spent her whole childhood taking for granted. She titled it simply Ready. It sold to a collector in another city for more money than she had ever earned in a single day. Everett hung a photograph of it in the kitchen, next to the window where the morning light was best. He did not say much about it. He rarely said much about things that meant the most to him. But every morning, without fail, he looked at it. The end.